Welcome to Bible study. Kelly, can you open with prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your love. Thank you for your word. Thank you that you chose us and picked us out to be your sons and daughters in this day and time. Thank you for the freedom that we have. Thank you for how you work in us mightily. Thank you for the rich fellowship we can enjoy day by day with you, and just how you continue to teach us. Thank you for how you supply our every need and how you protect us always. Thank you for your word prospering in our lives. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Well, it's such a blessing to be with you today. I am going to share on some things that are kind of personal. So I might cry. It's okay. I have tissues. I'm ready. Okay. So because I've been reflecting on a lot of things, because it is coming up on the 1-year anniversary of a lot of radical changes that happened in my life. And thinking back on everything, I keep thinking about how much I've learned to trust God in all of these new situations that I find myself in. And it's funny because I didn't necessarily start this teaching wanting to teach about trusting God, especially because it can be kind of repetitive. That's a topic that's taught a lot, I've noticed, and it's kind of like, okay, trusting God, blah, blah, blah. Lean not on your own understanding, in all their ways acknowledge Him, He shall direct thy paths, blah, 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 right? And you kind of know it by heart, and you kind of know that you have to do it, and it's kind of like, okay, boring reminder. But what I've realized in the past year is that trust is actually a verb. It's something that we're supposed to do, to take action on. And it's an action that we have to take in order to have any sort of success or prosperity or growth in any way. And a year ago, I walked out on my believing and trusted God like I never have before. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And it's just funny because there are some situations that we orchestrate ourselves, that we put ourselves into, and there are some situations that we're forced into dealing with. But in both of those types of situations, there is always a choice to trust God, right? So, so my life a while ago was, it was pretty cool. I had a fiance. I had been living with him for 3 years. We were going to get married in a year and a half. Everything was going great, or so it looked like. Spiritually, my life was a mess. And so before I go any further, when I talk about this relationship, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not saying that anything was anybody's fault or anything like this. I'm just telling the story from my perspective. And it's just what happened from my viewpoint, I guess. You know, it's not in order to shame anybody in any way. So anyway, I thought I was content while I was in this relationship when really I was in a state of complacency, which I looked up the difference between contentment and complacency, because contentment is an actual state of happiness and satisfaction. And complacency is self-satisfaction, and this was the most interesting part to me, was especially when accompanied by unawareness of actual dangers or deficiencies. So that's where a lot of people are in life. I think that it's very easy to fall into those plateaus where you get complacent with the way things are, even though you might recognize that there are issues and you just kind of deal with them and let them pass and float over them in a sense.
Can you repeat that definition?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so complacency is self-satisfaction, especially when accompanied by unawareness of actual dangers or deficiencies. So basically, I couldn't see the dangers or deficiencies in my relationship. I was wrapped up in a bunch of outward issues. You know, I was living with my brother as well at the time. I thought it was my brother. I thought it was the amount of money we made. I thought it was the lack of time we got to spend together because I was working so much. I thought it was all these different things. And it was interesting because the adversary kept me confused and distracted with all of these things. So it started with, we don't make enough money. Okay, so I'll pick up another job. I'll pick up another job. Now I'm working 3 jobs, right? And then, okay, we want to live in an apartment that's outside of our means, so we picked up my brother as a roommate, right? And then, okay, we're still unhappy with everything, so let's go on a trip. That'll fix everything, right? I mean, I make enough money, we deserve to go on a vacation, right? And so it just felt, looking back, it felt like there was a hose on, and it had all of these holes in it, and I was plugging all of the holes to make the water stop from going everywhere, when I really should have just turned off the spigot. So, thank God I have a wonderful friend who pulled me out of that situation. My favorite part about this story is that Kelly never counseled me about whether I should be in the relationship or not. She literally just gave me the word, and slowly but surely it became clear that I should make changes. And I didn't stop the relationship immediately either. But after a couple of conversations, I decided to ask the man that I was with if our lease was coming to an end, and I asked him if he would be comfortable if we moved separately, and tried to start our relationship afresh in different apartments, basically. And this was a big deal for me because I had never not had roommates. I went from my parents' house to a dorm room in college to an apartment in college to living with this man. So like literally roommates forever. I had never been alone, never, not once, and it freaked me out like a lot. And so my first night, we actually moved on a Sunday, and I had worked the morning shift at a breakfast place, and I came home to no one. It was like terrible, and I cried a lot, but now it's kind of funny because I trusted God enough to push me out of my comfort zone. You know, my comfort zone was being with people and having people around, and I just was obviously I wasn't actually alone, but I felt completely alone in that moment, and I had to trust him that it was going to be okay. And the coolest part is, now I'm really excited to go home and not have anybody. All my food is in the fridge. The apartment is exactly the way I left it when I left it. I don't have to worry about anything about any other people at all. I don't have to work around anybody's schedule. It's so awesome. So I'm blessed, super abundantly blessed in a way that I thought that I would not be, basically. But anyway, it took that trust and that believing action to ask that question, to move forward and get separate apartments, to do all these things. And I don't even recognize the person that I was before, the person that I was a year ago. And God says that he will do that, which is really cool to see it in action. Because I've prayed and hoped and believed many times to be changed, because I know the verse in 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. All old things are passed away, and behold, all things are become new." And I've looked at that verse, and it's never resonated with me until like right now, because I can actually see that I'm a completely different person, which is super cool. So anyway, before I start crying, if you want to turn to Joshua, I'd love to take a look at a record in the Word. Am I rushing yet? No? Yes, a little bit? Got it.
You're yelling at us.
What? So the book of Joshua, you can go to chapter 1, verse 1. It starts with Moses' death. So Moses was leading the Israelites around for 40 years in the wilderness, and he had a right-hand man, and his name was Joshua. And so Moses dies, right? So in verse 1 and 2, we see that. It says, "Now, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel." So Moses dies. Joshua has to take up the lead. He's prepared. I mean, he's been the second in command for a long time, but God's telling him to do a really big thing, which is take certain men and go across the Jordan River into Jericho and basically attack and conquer all the people in that area. And then if you skip to verse 5, this is still God talking. It says, there shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. And I really enjoyed reading this passage because it doesn't necessarily say in the Bible that Joshua was nervous or afraid, but for God to tell him all this and reassure him like that, he must have had some doubts. And even if he didn't have doubts, for God to look on his heart and give him the words that he needed and the instruction that he needed in order to lead this people, that's really just the personal God that we have. And so if we keep reading, this is where Joshua trusts God and then steps into his role for the first time and commands the people to do something. So verse 10 says, Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, Pass through the host and command the people, saying, Prepare you victuals, for within 3 days ye shall pass over this Jordan to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God giveth you to possess it. And to the Reubenites and to the Gadites and to half the tribe of Manasseh spake Joshua, saying, Remember the word which Moses the servant of the Lord commanded you, saying, The Lord your God hath given you rest, and hath given you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your cattle shall remain in the land which Moses gave you on this side Jordan, but ye shall pass before your brethren, armed, all the mighty men of valor, and help them, until the Lord have given your brethren rest, as he hath given you, and they also have possessed the land which the Lord your God giveth them. Then ye shall return unto the land of your possession, and enjoy it, which Moses the Lord's servant gave you on this side Jordan toward the sun rising. And so basically, he trusted God not only to lead those people, but to tell them that this is what God said was going to happen. So then in verse 16, it's really cool because all of the people, all of the Israelites, decide that Joshua is a pretty good guy, and they believe that God is with him, and they pledge their allegiance to him. So if we keep reading, it says, And they answered Joshua, saying, All that thou commandest us we will do, and whithersoever thou sendest us we will go. According as we hearkened unto Moses in all things, so will we hearken unto thee. Only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. Whosoever he be that doth rebel against thy commandment, and will not hearken unto thy words in all that thou commandest him, he shall be put to death. Only be strong and of a good courage. And so this is the first time that the people are like recognizing his leadership. But what I think is interesting is that Joshua still hasn't proven himself at this point. So the first time that he proves himself is actually to be a leader is actually in chapter 3. So basically, to get to where they needed to go, they had to pass through the Jordan River. And so the plan was that, the priests were going to carry the Ark of the Covenant into the river. The river was going to part just like the Red Sea for Moses, and then all the people were going to cross the river, and then the Ark of the Covenant would leave the river, and the river would go back to doing what it usually does. And so in verse 7, God commands Joshua, says, And the Lord said unto Joshua, This day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. And thou shalt command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, When ye are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, ye shall stand still in Jordan. And so now Joshua has the command from God. Now he has to choose to trust God in order to command the people and move forward with this plan. And that's the same choice that we have to make in every situation all the time, is whether to trust God or not. Because honestly, he could have just like ran away. He could have said, no, let's go around the river or do something else. He could have done a lot of things, but he trusted God and he told them what to do, exactly what God told him. And it works out. So in verse 15 says, And as they that bear the ark were come into Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan overfloweth all his banks all the time of harvest, that the waters which came down from above stood and rose up upon a heap very far from the city Adam, that is beside Zaratan, and those that came down towards the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people passed over right against Jericho. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. So hooray! It worked out. God did exactly as he said he would do. And then the reward for all of that is in chapter 4, verse 13. It says, About 40,000 prepared for war passed over before the Lord unto battle to the plains of Jericho. And on that day the Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared or respected him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. So what's really cool is that he trusted God, he did the thing, God performed the miracle, and then all of the people had their believing right behind him. Because they had already acknowledged his position, but they hadn't believed with him until that moment, right? So now he's a true leader, and that's when he really steps out of his comfort zone and into his leadership position, which is awesome. So the biggest part for me about this record was how Joshua made God his sufficiency and literally just trusted that he was going to do what he said he was going to do. And that's really hard sometimes, but and it's so funny to like contrast it, because he had to believe for like a river, for the waters to be parted in a river, and I just have to believe that I make enough money this week. You know, like it seems so minuscule compared sometimes. But anyway, so if we go back to the record, if you go to verse chapter 3. Wait. Is it chapter 3? Yeah, I'm sorry. Chapter 3, verse 13. And we'll go and read this section again, just for a minute. It says, "And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon an heap." And as we were reading in verse 15, there was a little parenthesis there that said, "For Jordan overfloweth all his banks all the time of harvest." So the river Jordan is pretty big in general, but this was springtime, and the mountain snow was melting and all this stuff, and so this became a rushing, enormous river that overflowed its banks. So we're not talking about parting just a little river. It was like a crazy, rapid-filled, enormous river, okay? And then I think the coolest part is that it said, first of all, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests touched the bank, right? So it wasn't they had to wade into the water and wait for it to, it was as soon as their feet touched the bank, the waters were parted. And on top of that, it says, "The waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon an heap," which in my mind means that there was a stopping point, and then all this water just like piled, like as if there was a wall there, you know, and there was a heap of water just waiting for them to pass, which is enormous. Like that's an enormous miracle. It's so cool. Right?
Yeah.
Right, because they had to stop it for an entire day because 40,000 people had to cross. And I was reading in the Dake's Bible that if they passed like 400 people, like if there were 400 people across and they all passed, it would still take an entire like sunrise to sunset for all of these people to cross the river. So like it was an enormous thing. Okay. So anyway, and that of course reminds me of Ephesians 3:20. If you want to turn there, I'm going to turn there. So Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us." Exceeding abundantly above. Exceeding abundantly above. So you even, right, the water just kept piling up, just kept going because they needed that time to cross with all those people. And it just makes me think of all the things that I ask God for and how he wants to bless me better than that, you know? And it also makes me think of the most recent example is y'all's house and how you thought you had a house and then God was like, "No, I have a better house for you," which is so awesome. To go back to my story of trusting God, it's very interesting that once I took that step, it was easier to take the next step. Because, I mean, once you set your sights in a certain direction, everything becomes clearer. So 6 months after I moved out and moved into my own apartment by myself, I realized that my career choice wasn't really working for me. I guess I'm not an office person. I had a desk job and it was miserable and I hated every second of it. And not the company necessarily, but just the work was awful. And it was so interesting because after I had gotten the rest of my life straightened out, it was very easy to see that I was not happy at my job at all. That one felt like I was just spinning my wheels and I was trying. Yes, back to complacency, because I was trying to make it work, and I had all these reasons to stay because, I got a degree, and so I'm trying to use my degree, and, they're paying me really well. I mean, the hourly salary was pretty good, and I don't know, where could I make more money, and how could I possibly leave this job and go to a different job? I've spent two years, I think it was 2 years there. Anyway, I was worried about other people's opinions, because what I really wanted to do was be a server, but nobody respects servers, which is not true, but that's what I had in my head for some reason. And because some people had told me that. Okay, some people had been like, really?
I'm sorry.
You're the worst. And but since I had already taken that step and it had already worked out, this is what Kelly talks about to me all the time, is like building that reservoir of examples to draw on, right? So I already had the example that I moved out and everything was fine, so I kind of made the leap and became a waitress in January, and I am so blessed. It's so ridiculous, because not only am I making more money, I've been able to pay down $5,000 in my student loans, hallelujah, and
Just since when?
just since January, yeah. And I'm also now, because of my time commitment is so much less, because the office job was a 9 to 5, which was so stressful because you were there for so long every day. But now that I have more time, I'm actually able to volunteer at a theater in the area, which I'm so excited about. So I still get to do all the things that I wanted to do, and God is blessing me exceeding abundantly above, right? So one of my favorite quotes right now is, God does not want you to try harder. He wants you to trust him deeper. So stop trying and start trusting, because we all can get caught up in trying to fix things and do things our own way, and what logically makes sense or worldly makes sense. And it's not always the best path for us. It just, because God always has a better path. He always has, because he wants to bless you exceeding abundantly above, he always has something better planned than you can even think about. And I'll close in 1 Peter 5. Okay, so verse 6 and 7. It says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you." And so that's my admonition to everybody tonight. And Aaron, will you pray?
Yeah, Heavenly Father, how thankful we are that you are our God, that is good always, that we can put our trust in you, and that we can just look to you for everything to meet our needs above and beyond our expectation. Thank you, Father, that you are a God that bountifully supplies, and that we just need to have that humility to understand that we are not sufficient of ourselves, but you are our sufficiency. So thank you for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 So what do you usually say? We love you. God bless you. We'll see you on Thursday.
Yay!
Yeah, there you go. That wasn't so bad.